RailUp, the future mobility podcast with innovators and leaders of the ecosystem. Presented by Sebastian Sperker.
Our guest today is Dominik Cajochen, a member of the executive management of Cargo Sous Terrain, an innovative future transport company based in Switzerland. As indicated by its name, we will delve into the fascinating concept of subterranean cargo transport and uncover the ambitious vision behind this inspiring project. Dominik will share insights into the setup of this unique transport system and discuss its significant potential benefits for the rail ecosystem. Furthermore, we will explore the public discourse surrounding this initiative and its benefits for Swiss citizens. I'm happy to have Dominik with us today, live from the beautiful city of Olten in the heart of Switzerland. Hi Dominik and welcome to RailUp. I always start the podcast with the same question. Dominik, you see yourself rather as a leader or an innovator?
Thanks, Sebastian, and thanks first of all for the kind invitation to this great podcast. I see myself rather as a leader. At first glance, Cargo Sous Terrain looks like a very innovative logistics system. However, if you look at it in detail, it's a combination of new but proven technologies, right? And they created a new digital complete logistics system for an economy that is transitioning to Industry 4.0. But really, there's not that much innovation here. What it is something that leads the way into a new multimodal world that is not only on the surface of this planet, but also in the underground, and freight transport is the dedication that we have here.
Okay, thanks Dominik. But before we get deep into the topic, let me introduce you our today's episode and let's start our journey. Switzerland we know is renowned for the high quality and performance of its railways and the railway network. However, even in Switzerland, the single network is facing financial difficulties and requires a public funding, which contradicts the goal of the profitable state railway of Switzerland. And as tax money is involved, the government initiated a broad public discussion with numerous stakeholders to explore potential solutions. And when I spoke to experts in Switzerland last year, they just brought me following scenarios. Number one, closing the unprofitable lanes of the single wagon network. And yes, of course, it will then lead for more trucks on the road. Number two is to fund and invest in railway infrastructure and subsidize single wagon loads to keep the current volume or even to increase the volume on rail. And then there was a big surprise that there is also third solutions on the table. That's the inspiring project of Cargo Sous Terrain, with a tunnel system connecting major cities from Geneva to Zurich and St. Gallen to transport smaller shipments directly from the outskirts to the city centers. And what surprised me was this suddenly both the rail investments and the Cargo Sous Terrain initiative were assigned with a price tag. And this shifted in perspective, altered the entire discussion from questioning why the rail is so expensive to acknowledging that even an alternative solution that may cost even more but holds significant potential for the economy and the climate as well. When I met Dominik the first time, he emphasized me that it will not be an either-or scenario, but rather a combination of all three modes of transport. And that's for me a quite really interesting approach. So I'm happy, Dominik, that you're here. And let's start. Let's talk about you. Let's talk about Cargo Sous Terrain, and let's talk about the bold vision.
So as we're going into this next decade of freight transport, we see in Switzerland that the increase of transport that is required to go along with the increase of the economic activity and the increase of the population here. Switzerland, we're looking to go from close to 9 million today to 10 million inhabitants over the next 15 to 20 years. And that, of course, puts a big strain on all the infrastructures that we have on the surface. And as you know, very similar in Austria, there's not that much place in Switzerland to live and to prosper and to grow, right? We've got 2/3 of our land is not really inhabitable, and all of the rest is where we are growing, and that's exactly where we want to put a third modality of freight transport onto this planet, which is under the ground. This has been seen as a solution already more than 10 years ago, when the biggest retailers of Switzerland came together and said, hey, let's think about a more innovative solution to this problem of the ever-increasing pressure on the infrastructure that we have, both on road and rail. And, a dedicated system that only does ship goods would be good, because obviously it's correct that rail and road has the priority for passengers, right? And so therefore, we create something here that is under the ground, that doesn't take more of the surface, and that is also dedicated for just-in-time deliveries of ever smaller shipments that we see as well. So it's the perfect solution also for the single wagon, if you think about what the single wagon is trying to do. But it is only one for really shorter distances. And it's only one for the start of the fine distribution of those goods. And that's why it's a perfect combination for the road and the rail, but mostly also the rail, because the road we don't see as sustainable, even if it goes to renewable energy, battery electric type of solutions. And just to give you a few figures, if the Swiss traffic for freight is increasing as said by the Federal Office for Spatial Development, that means 1.7 million more truck transports in 2050. And the increase of the rail, as now decided by the government to give more funding also to the single wagon, that will take away 980,000 of those. And we in Cargo Sous Terrain will take another 870,000. So there's just a little bit of destraining of the road, but the road will remain as big as it is today, but it will not grow. And that's the aim of our solution.
Okay, but if we just count like the numbers, basically with the single wagon network initiative plus Cargo Sous Terrain, basically you will cut like the increase of the road.
Yes, this is what we're achieving. And it is also clear that even if you build out further the roads, it will not be enough. And there's just simply not enough space. People also need to live somewhere and have a good quality of life. And so therefore, a lot of big companies in Switzerland, including banks, insurances, and the retailers I've mentioned before, are part of this initiative. But we also have logistics companies that have seen the value of an underground system.
And I think one aspect before we go a little bit closer, but what is Cargo Sous Terrain all about? But basically, you just said like one cool fact is, or the important fact is, that this initiative would be like private financed, right? It's not about us spending public money. It's, yes, I do have like investors in the background, and this could be a way forward. Absolutely.
We've shown in our business case that this is a very nice investment for long-term investors, obviously, because it's heavy investment. It will cost us, to complete the whole infrastructure across Switzerland, 35 billion Swiss francs. But it is one that will give you returns on your investment for 80 to 100 years as a minimum. And it will always run conveyor belt style to connect all of the big hubs and centers of Switzerland that will grow and that will benefit of a solution that will pop out the goods and supply the goods, but also take the reverse logistics away from those hubs in the center of those hubs and not outside of the hubs. That's one of the major differences, right, to today.
Can you just explain our audience so how Cargo Sous Terrain is working, and just give you an idea, or give us an idea how it's working?
So technically, we've got tunnels and multimodal logistics hubs, and they're a perfect combination then with road and rail. So all of our hubs obviously have a rail connection when it makes sense. So long distance, high volume rail, shorter distance, start of fine distribution is our system. And our system also has a big digital element. So we're already investing today, not only in the plans of the tunnel and the hubs, but in a digitization initiative that will build a digital platform for multimodal logistics in Switzerland. And that's probably the most innovative element of our system. It's not even the self-driving pods in our tunnel that will hold up to 2 pallets. That's, of course, innovative, but self-driving pods aren't anymore in and on its own. Of course, what's also interesting is that in a way this becomes the biggest sorting machine and sequencing and buffering machine also in Switzerland, because it is based on shipping small units. So our pods hold two pallets, and that's the most economical way forward. And it is a great rate of return for our investors over the long period.
Okay, so basically, as you said, you transport with one pod like 2 euro pallets. So we have really like a small units which is transported. And if I understand right, basically there will be logistics hubs which are connected to road but also to rail. And basically what you do, you unload, for example, a rail wagon, then you just reconfiguring the units and just putting the small part of the loading to the pods. The pods, it will run in the tunnel system. So basically there will be an elevator bringing it down. And then you transport from the hubs to the city centers, and again with an elevator up. And then you are more or less wherever these distribution centers are, but you are close to the city centers.
Yes.
Have you any idea like how many of these distribution centers in the city will be, for example, in Zurich? Are there 1 or 100 planned? Or
we have completely planned that out already because we're so close to getting construction permits. So in the city of Zurich itself, we have 3 hubs. They are very well distributed across the city so that we don't, for example, burden the bridges across some of the rivers or across the rails. The more you have, of course, the better it is for the traffic. And so we're planning 3 in the city itself. We have 1 that is outside to the south, where you also can go into the city through a road tunnel. And then we have 1 at the airport as well. So in total, there will be 5 hubs in and around Zurich that deliver this big city that will become even bigger, where about 1 million people live in and around Zurich. Of course, the biggest business case also comes from Zurich for this first leg of the system.
And what I just read on your homepage, you're already starting today, if not just think about how to transport the goods to logistics centers, but also how to do the city logistics in a green, sustainable way, right?
Yes, we've started with some packet stations, so single boxes can be delivered there. That's already to reduce the traffic in the highly congested areas where people actually live. And then what we've also started doing is try to break all sorts of records with road transport, going really long distances with battery electric, with trucks. And we're currently doing every day for one of our retail customers 380 kilometers. And that's how we're trying to show and also learn what it means to be an emission-free system. Because in the end, Cargo Sous Terrain will be completely emission-free and only with renewable energy, delivering in the first leg already 50,000 pallets every day.
Okay, that sounds great. And basically why I also invited you for RailUp, because like what I really love on the approach is basically rail. We know it's not good to go to the city center and to distribute. So if you want to go really to the urban regions, you have to use another mode of transport. And basically, of course, there are mainly the road. So you can go by truck or some like in the city, even with bicycles, but you need to change the mode of transport anyhow. And so the way of thinking is how you can do it in the smartest way possible. And as we know that in city centers, especially in rush hours, the whole road infrastructure is already congested, and it will get even more. Yeah, although also public transports plays their role. But I think it's a really good integration and linking 2 modes of transport together in order to fulfill like a supply chain. And if you think it bigger, then basically a container could be transported to the ports, then with the rail directly to one of the logistics centers, and then let's say literally the last mile to the city center is then done with Cargo Sous Terrain, and then maybe distributed and really just not a last mile, like the last hundreds of meters or kind of like to the customer.
Yes, that's right. So we try to be as little as possible on the roads. And when you are already starting only in the middle of the city, that's perfect. And I think the rail is the most sustainable means of transport, and the distances can be covered really well with rail and the big volumes as well. So it's a perfect combination. And we're really love to see as much as possible, going to our hubs, coming to our hubs from the rail, and then they're going to the city. And by the way, the amount of hours of traffic jams in Switzerland has tripled in the last 10 years. Only on the national road, it's gone from 100,000 hours to 300,000 hours. And we know that the cities have a huge problem with the going in and out of the city. And of course, since we come out in the middle of the city, that's perfect. You could also think about the rail. Why doesn't the rail go in the middle of the Zurich? And the main station of Zurich, there could be or close to it, there used to be a freight terminal, but there's too many people, right? And the rail is the network. The rail network cannot absorb more, particularly during daytime. But when do things need to be supplied is during the daytime. So it's the perfect situation that long distance during night rail, and then we go into the city with Cargo Sous Terrain during the day, whenever, and we don't put more congestion onto the roads. And the last mile becomes 100 meters.
That's really a new dimension of thinking or talking about last mile. Let's speak a little bit about the technique. So you construct tunnels, and in the tunnels they're running pods. But I was a little bit surprised, to be honest, like that these pods are not running on tracks, but it's running basically on a little road inside the tunnels. So basically, it's a little autonomous truck on the road. So what was the reason why you decided to go rather on wheels and a road rather than on tracks?
The main reason is the sorting functionality and the bundling functionality of the tunnel. So we're trying to combine goods that come from different places but need to go to the same place in the city. So an example would be a retailer, let's say Coop. They would have a national distribution center that's linked directly to our tunnel. So directly they produce from the national distribution center into our tunnels. And then there's a regional distribution center with fresh goods, for example, that comes from another place, but that's also directly linked to the tunnel. And both of these goods need to go to the same points of sale, and they combine in the tunnel. And because we need to combine them in the tunnel also with other goods from other people that need to go to the same place, we need to be very flexible in moving those pods onto the different lanes. So we have 3 lanes down there, and the middle lane is our sorting lane. If you try to do this with rail, it would be much more efficient. I would love it from an economical perspective, but I cannot imagine how it works. Moving in and out, you need to have almost a rail harp down there, and then it becomes huge, right? We all know this from the rail freight terminals. We have one here in Limmatal. It's many football fields big, and we're trying to do the same in a much smaller space in the tunnel. Otherwise, it's not economical.
Because space under the surface is quite difficult and expensive to create. What will be the network is all about? Like how many kilometers you plan in the network?
In the end, we're looking at the network of 500 kilometers, about 80 hubs. And that's going from Geneva all the way in the southwest of Switzerland to the northeast, St. Gallen. So all of the inhabitable area, if you want, and then also going from Basel, where the main import-export station is, to Lucerne. That's 500 kilometers, 80 hubs. And then the first leg, which we want to open already in way less than 10 years, around 2032, that's from, let's say, the logistic heart of Switzerland, which is around Herkingen to Zurich. So from the middle of Switzerland to the most populated and densely populated place of Zurich, where you also have the heaviest traffic on the road.
It sounds like quite fast. I mean, 32 sounds a little bit far away, but I mean, if you have to construct everything, and basically that's even tomorrow, right? I mean, to start. Okay. And how far the project is right now?
So one of the great things we now have is since the 1st of August 22, we have a law for underground transport in Switzerland. So there's a federal law, and we only need a permission to construct our tunnel system and the associated hubs. We only need that permission from the Federal Office of Traffic. So there's only one authority. So we don't have to go all through all the communal and cantonal permits. Of course, the communal and cantonal departments will have a contribution, and they need to put it into their own plannings. But that already saves us many, many years of work and of getting permits. So we only get one permit. We have that law. The second thing is we're doing everything in parallel. So the planning for all of these 11 hubs we have in the first leg, as well as for all of the tunnels and for all of the work that we need to do, the construction work, is all in parallel. We now have over 300 engineers and planners that already work, where the pre-project is already completed. Now, when you think about building the tunnel, we will have a lot of tunnel digging machines running simultaneously as well. So we will build the 72 kilometers of stretch with at least 5 tunnel boring machines at the same time.
Okay, wow.
And that's mainly due to the fact that we're privately invested, right? We need time to market to be as short as possible. And luckily, we now have this law. And luckily, we have these shareholders that are happy to still wait for another years until we start making money.
Okay. Can you just tell us a little bit about the political and maybe also economical discussion about the project? I guess there are some part of the community who is super excited about having like a certain mode of transport. It's a little bit maybe associated with the lovely Elon Musk project of Hyperloop kind of. But I guess on the other hand, there could be also doubters. They say like, before invest billions of digging some tunnels below, let's invest in the existing infrastructure and maybe the benefit is them out of that. So can you just, what is so a little bit the political and also society discussion circles around with this project?
I think there's two big fields of doubters, right? And we can talk about the fans later. We have a lot of fans, by the way, also international fans. We get to do a lot of consulting in Hong Kong, in Japan, etc. But the doubters, there are really two fields. One is economical doubters that say this is too expensive for a market where you don't actually make a lot of money. And if you said it yourself, right? The single wagon transport business for the rail in Switzerland is not profitable at all. You know, they lost over 100 million last year. So how can this be economical, right? Because you have the same issue with the multimodality, etc. And my answer always to those critics is that we are not just building a transport system. It's more than that, right? If it were just a transport from A to B, yeah, maybe you're right. And of course, we're not replacing full transport loads. We're in the less than full truckloads. We're in the less than truckload business.
Mini truckloads.
And that business, yes. And that business exists. It's actually a fairly big business and it's growing rapidly. And that business is willing to pay a bit more and we can work with it. We don't need to fill a full truck. We don't need to fill a full wagon. We don't need to fill a whole freight train. We can go with single pallets and really make it a good, profitable business. And from shipper to receiver, we're actually going to be even a little bit faster because we have no restrictions whatsoever, right? We have no traffic jams, but we also have, in Switzerland, we have the Sunday truck is not allowed to be on the road on a Sunday or at night unless you're transporting fresh goods. We have a lot of benefits also when it comes to speed. And so my answer to the economical doubters is we have a very solid business plan for less than truckload business. That's our business. And a lot of people think that FTL is our business, but that's a full truck will still run from A to B without going underground. Of course, it will be in a traffic jam at times, but and it will get more expensive also because of taxes and truck driver shortage, fueled inflation of cost. But our business is less than a truckload, LTL.
That was the first group you mentioned.
Yes, now the second group. Yeah, thanks, Sebastian, for reminding me of that I was saying. So the second group is the group that actually has doubts around the impact to nature, the impact of this huge construction, this huge infrastructure, right? First and foremost, is it all safe underground? Isn't there groundwater, for example? And there, yes, it's true. There's a lot of good groundwater where people live today. Where did humans build their cities? Where you have groundwater, obviously. That means we have to build a tunnel really far below the groundwater. We're going 40 to 60 meters below. But then you need to come out somewhere. And there needs to be a groundwater island where we come out, because we don't want to have any damage whatsoever to the groundwater. But we managed to do that. We have done our fair share already of drilling. We have spent more than 8 million Swiss francs last year just on drilling and finding out in the cities, where are those islands of groundwater. But there's also other concerns around traffic. NIMBY is, of course, here as well. Not in my backyard, please. I like those underground tunnels, fine, but the hubs right in front of my house is not what I want, right? And there will be, of course, a little bit more traffic around the hubs. And we need to show to people that that is still better than all the other alternatives, right? And then there's all sorts of interests, of course, also from competition. Let's be clear that this growth that we have in Switzerland in freight transport need is also something that other people would like to make business with. And now between Rail and Cargo Sous Terrain, we're taking that growth. And we hope to take that growth. We're not certain yet. But definitely other people would like to take that growth too. And that's mostly truckers that are happy to be on the roads today.
Yeah. But I mean, I see like just from a daily example with everyone. I mean, if you I'm pretty sure that even like the parcel services will be then integrated. Yeah. So if you have your Amazon package, basically now this is running with the truck to the city, but then it comes up in a very urban region already, and then maybe the vision of yes, there is the last 100 meters with the bicycle or it's green. It becomes even more realistic than it is today.
Absolutely. We have to say, in our system, we are not delivering single parcels, but we have a very strong partner, the Swiss Post, and also other partners, DPD, etc. And what we're doing is we will deliver the consolidated parcel that need to go to an area of a city, and then we'll give it to these people to do the final sorting and then do the final distribution. But of course, it will, the biggest problem we now have in the cities is that the van, the vans are getting so much more on with the online shopping, etc. In Switzerland, we're predicting that the vans are going up 58% in the next 20 years. And that's just what they carry in terms of weight. But now you translate that with ever smaller shipments into how much kilometers they will do. And that's fairly crazy. And we think that we can have a big impact on the explosion of number of vans that we have in our urban areas, but also in the rural areas. Of course, there's more vans that are being seen on the road and on the roadside and stopping everywhere.
And now we talked about the doubters. Who are your fans beside the investors?
Number one fans is the broad public in Switzerland. I get a lot of encouragement. We get a lot of good media coverage because everyone is clear that the surface that we live on is really already very small, and that you need to find a new way of moving things around, be it people or be it freight. And what better to put under the ground than freight? So people love that aspect, and they see that hopefully we can protect more of our beautiful landscape in Switzerland. And that's the quality of life is the same thing every other country is after. And that's a big discussion, particularly with climate change, etc. That's why we get a lot of requests from all over the world to show them how our system works, because they need to go underground too. A lot of concerns that people have about where will the future generations live and how will they live. And definitely they want to live here on the surface, but freight doesn't need to be up here.
I agree. And basically, talking about cooperation and fans, is there any connection with the Hyperloop initiatives? Because like what you have basically in common is how to drill very fast and cheap and high quality tunnels, right? Is there also a cooperation where you can learn each other, or is that the Switzerland that's basically way good in drilling tunnels?
No, we definitely look for that collaboration. So we have Virgin Hyperloop already in our shareholding.
Okay.
There are a few exchanges there. We also work with, there's 2 big initiatives in Switzerland that also look at Hyperloop, and with one of them we're in more or less regular contact. But one has to say that whatever you hear about Hyperloop, and this is just my own opinion, I feel that the technology is not yet as far as it needs to be for us to really, work with it so that we could open our system in 8 years from now. It's really not that far yet, particularly for a commercially, sound project. And therefore, yes, there is some collaboration, but we definitely don't bank anything on Hyperloop right now for us. Also, the speed is not so important for our rather short distance freight system.
What's the speed of a pod?
We've just done simulations. We're running just above 30 kilometers an hour. Call it 34 kilometers an hour. Maybe we can crank it up, at certain areas of the tunnel to 40, 50 kilometers an hour. But for us, that's not really that important. What it is important to us is from the shipper to the receiver, what is that time that we have? And that is a time that is very, very competitive, definitely with rail, but also with road, right? One of the things that I'm a bit worried about in the context of rail, and since we're in a RailUp podcast, what I'm worried about, what I learned about rail is that it takes hours for a freight train to start moving. Even it's fully loaded, everything is fine, but you know this better than I do, obviously. But I was surprised when I learned about the facts of freight on the rail, how much it takes. And even though you can then afterwards go 80 kilometers an hour, you've lost so much until you get going. And then again, when you start discharging, you again lose a lot of time. And so my focus with Cargo Sous Terrain is making sure that when we change the modality from Cargo Sous Terrain to rail, or when we change the modality from Cargo Sous Terrain to road, to maximize the speed there, that's much more the focus than to making the pods more fast.
Absolutely. Like if for those who done already a triathlon, like the sprint triathlon in specific, it's absolutely essential that you're fast switching from swimming to the bike, or from bike to for running. If you're not good at that, you will probably not win any competition. So
we see it the same way.
So we discussed in previous podcasts quite much. I mean, the rail is absolutely, in terms of energy efficient, really good in transporting long distances, heavy volume. There is absolutely the strengths and the USP of the rail, but not in small cargo, small units in city centers. So I fully agree. And as we also noted, especially the passenger and public transport will be much more increased, like in the city center. So there is very, very limited infrastructure, and it's probably more needed or not more used for passengers. So basically, in the whole combination is that everything is growing on mobility, passenger and cargo. That might also sounds like to mitigate a little bit the congestion there. And like and like to 2 points which I just would like to add here in our previous discussion. What I found quite interesting, that you said basically that Cargo Sous Terrain would be, I don't know if the number one customer in the next years for the rail, but basically one of the biggest customer, because you need to transport all the output of the tunnel drilling somewhere else. And you probably will transport this with rail. So this could be even like for the next 10, 15 years, a great potential for rail, right?
Absolutely. It's constructing the tunnel where we need per year, during the construction phase, 2,000 full freight trains. I mean, this is with 10, 11, 12 wagons. And this is not just for the stuff that we take out from drilling, but it's also to put the stuff in to actually make the tunnel work. And we can only do this via rail. Road is not even an option because of the weight that we have and because of the volume that we have. And so, we'll be a big customer. And we also like the fact that construction will be supplied by our friends from the rail corporations, because that's very sustainable. We really want to be as sustainable as possible from today until we go into operation and during operation. And the construction phase is a very important phase. By the way, we will construct for at least 25 years until we're done for the whole thing. So 2,000 freight trains
a year
per year for 25 years. That's quite a nice business. For anybody that wants to transport the cargo on rail in Switzerland, of course, SBB Cargo would be the main player here, but we're also looking at other ones.
So basically, if you follow the philosophy of Keynes, it's basically if you're already like generating a lot of performance and work. And the second point, which I would like just to highlight there, you will drill a tunnel, and basically, if you want to the tunnel to run with pods, you obviously need a flat surface. So you cut a cut of the whole tunnel into parts, like the lower part and a higher part where the pods are running. And in the below, like say the road of the tunnels, there will be also pipelines, yeah. And basically you told me like there is also a very cool topic on going there, because as I've understood, like below there will be also like some tubes, and basically these tubes could be addressed to one of the major topics in the future, especially for industry, because with the CO2 cutting of the industry, we have to transport the CO2 somewhere, and basically these tubes can then transport even like additionally, without having another infrastructure, also tons of CO2, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are trying to bundle into the infrastructure as much as possible other needs that Switzerland has. And so the carbon capture and storage is now a huge topic, because otherwise we will not achieve our 2050 net zero goal that we have together with the Swiss government here for the Swiss population. And, it's not a coincidence that our tunnel will go and pass by the most important emitters of CO2, be it the waste-to-energy plant, be it the cement industry, be it the chemical industry. They're all exactly fairly close to where we want to build the tunnel. And then you can liquefy the carbon, put it into our pipeline, drive it all the way up to Basel. And then hopefully the Germans or the French and then in the Benelux, you have more pipelines to go all the way to Rotterdam. And then up in the North Sea, you have depleted gas fields that you can then fill with that carbon, that CO2, or you go all the way to Iceland, where you already now have the sequestration into that special stone that you can remineralize the carbon. And that's 8 million tons of CO2 that Switzerland needs to get rid of. And we actually calculated that, yes, it fits into the pipeline under the road that we're building in the tunnel. So it's perfect.
And also that could be also potential for rail transport, because we are like they're already developing quite intensively solutions to transport in an efficient way. That's really great. And normally, Dominik, I ask like what would the biggest thing what you do as a European Commissioner for Transport, but as you're in Switzerland, so I ask like if you would be the Ministry of Transport in Switzerland, so basically what would be the major topic in terms of transportation and mobility? What would be your headline?
My headline would be, how do we become more efficient in transporting freight all across Switzerland? How can we work together closer, collaborate between all the actors, all the players in the field of transport, so that we can be more efficient? Our current Minister of Transport is pledging to subsidize more the rail, which is great. I think it's useful because it's not yet economically viable as it should be. But it's also pledging to increase the highways, between Zurich and Bern, go to 6 lanes instead of 4 lanes. And that's definitely something that I think if we are more efficient, we don't need that. And that would be my pledge, try to get the actors together and try to be more efficient.
Dominik, I think that's really cool closing words, because I think this is one of the main messages. I think in order to get like a very efficient way of transport, you have to link the modes in a way that you're just using the benefits and advantages of each mode, and to integrate them rather than what you even said like very before. It's not an rather or, it's just how we do it together, right? And that's basically also the motivation and also spirit of RailUp, really to talk to smart people, to link it together, and basically to get our homework done in terms of get rid of the CO2 emissions by having a very sufficient and quality transportation model in the background. So Dominik, it was a pleasure to having you from Switzerland. Thank you very much for having you in RailUp, and then quite exciting to visit you hopefully very soon or in a couple of years once the first pod are running below the surface.
Thank you so much, Sebastian. Thanks for the invitation again, for the great discussion. And I look forward to hearing more and more of your podcast. It's great. Thank you.
What is the contribution to drive climate change?
My motivation to have joined Cargo Sous Terrain is to bring away the diesel trucks from the road and do that in a more efficient way.
The ball is in your court. What is the next step to drive change?
The next step to drive the change is that we all consume less, that we all are more purposeful when it comes to thinking about transport and efficiencies in transport.
Which superhero do we need to avoid the climate disaster?
We need superheroes in our multinational organizations, in our governments around the planet, and of course, every voting member of democracies to go forward with the one thing that will save our planet, which is do everything against climate change that we can.
What's the takeaway from this episode?
My key takeaway from today's episode is that introducing a fifth mode of transport integrated within an entirely new infrastructure holds significant potential for both the economy and citizen. It is a clear fact that urban areas are increasingly burdened with traffic, often pushing current infrastructure to its limit. The concept of a tunnel system designed to transport smaller units from logistic hubs on the city outskirts directly to urban centers appears to be a viable solution. Crucially, this new transport mode must be seamlessly integrated with existing systems like rail and road to maximize its benefits. Additionally, we learned the importance of public discourse in pioneering new solutions and establishing the appropriate legal framework. I was particularly impressed by the inclusion of small pipelines for CO2 transportation in the concept, underscoring its pivotal role in achieving the ambitious goal of CO2 neutrality by 2050. Today's discussion also highlighted that while rail tracks are a common transport solution, they are not always the most effective, especially if it comes to smaller shipments. A project like Cargo Sous Terrain could significantly enhance rail transport by linking it with new systems, which aligns perfectly with my mission of RailUp to explore the future of mobility.
This podcast connects innovators and leaders worldwide to shape the future ecosystem of rail. RailUp by Sebastian Sperker.